thought I'd give you a little bit of a background about what I do, how I got to where I am, and maybe some top tips if it's something that you're interested in. Because I think when often people talk about weather and meteorology, they do think of television and radio weather forecasts. So that's one of the jobs that I have. So weather presenting is what I'm going to be talking to you about. So as I said, my name is Kirsty McCabe. I am a broadcast meteorologist, which is just a fancy way of saying weather presenter, but it also tells you that I'm a little bit more qualified, because most of the weather presenters you see on TV, the vast majority of them do have some sort of meteorological training, but not all. So most of us have got backgrounds in physics or related subjects. We've trained at places like the Met Office or RAF bases before making appearances on TV. And the main part of my job is to present weather and climate information, and usually doing that via television, radio, or online platforms. And the reason, it may sound quite trivial day to day, but it's quite important that we can take all the quite complicated meteorological jargon and translate that into what the audience wants to hear, and to tailor it to the different audiences at different times of day, different TV networks, different radio networks. It's obviously very different to do TV with graphics as opposed to radio where you have nothing. So it's very important that we can work out what we want to say so that we can get the message across. And because it's not always trivial, one of the most important things of being a weather presenter is that it's our job to communicate when there's severe weather going on and make sure that people are aware, for example, if there's storms or thunderstorms, which have been in the forecast quite a lot recently. So it's very important for us to keep people informed. At the moment, I actually have more than one role. I'm working for 4 different companies. It just seems to have evolved that way, all on a part-time basis. So I produce and present the weather for Sky News, and that involves creating contents, the graphics, writing scripts, presenting on air now and again, and keeping the newsroom up to date on severe weather. So that's quite an important part of that role. I'm also an account manager for Metro Weather, and that's the business arm of the New Zealand Met Service. And that's more of a sales-based role, but I do cover some forecasting shifts there. And I also offer some presenter and graphics training, and also some meteorological training to TV presenters across Europe, the Middle East and Africa. And not quite finished yet with what I do for a living. I'm also the editor of Met Matters, which is part of the Royal Meteorological Society's website. And that's the part of the website that covers weather and climate content, which is aimed at enthusiasts rather than experts. So if you want to know why the sky's blue, how are rainbows formed, it's a really nice place to see. We've got some written articles, some little videos, some animations, a few podcasts. So there's lots on there. And then finally, I pick up a few presenting shifts at the BBC. So I'm kept quite busy. Over the years, I've worked for pretty much all the TV channels. BBC, ITV, Channel 5, the Weather Channel, Sky News. So you can see a few pictures there from some behind the scenes pictures of where I've been working. And you might notice it's not always the same. Sometimes you've got an actual screen behind you. Sometimes it's big, sometimes it's small, sometimes you've got a green screen. Sometimes you're even outside in the garden, and during lockdown in my own back garden. But it's never boring. And I think that's probably one of the things that I enjoy most about it. No 2 days are the same, and you'll always still get that little adrenaline rush, a little buzz when you're doing live TV or radio. But it's actually harder than you think to be a weather presenter. For one thing, if you're in a green screen, then there's nothing behind you. So one of the reasons that weather presenters never use auto cue, you might have noticed that newsreaders have scripts and they read it and they can see in the camera what they're saying next. We don't have that as weather presenters. What we see in the camera is ourselves. And it's a little bit different than looking in a mirror, because everything is flipped. So what I'm seeing in the camera is effectively what you see at home. But if I move that way in the camera, it moves the opposite way, obviously, in what I can see. So it can mess with your mind a bit. We don't have a script, as I mentioned. That's because weather durations can change quite a lot as well. So they might tell you have a minute, and then they go, oh no, only 30 seconds, please. So you have to be able to, as you're speaking, get shorter or longer. You make the graphics yourself when you come in the morning. You have to look at all the weather charts. You have to decide what your weather story is going to be. So there's a lot going on. And while you're actually doing the weather, you're pointing at charts that often aren't really there. And you've got a voice in your head, the director shouting out how long you've got, which can get a bit confusing. So you're hearing numbers in there, and then you're giving numbers. And we also get the blame, of course, when it rains. But I always think it's a little bit like a swan gliding along serenely. If someone's very good at presenting the weather, you don't realise that so much is going on behind the scenes. They make it look quite effortless. So it's a complicated thing, but it's also a very enjoyable one. You're telling people what they want to know. Most people want to talk about the weather. So my journey, being Scottish, you might have twigged there's an accent. I didn't do A levels, but I was quite into the sciences. So I did chemistry, physics, English, geography, maths, and then did 6-year studies in chemistry, maths, and physics. And then I actually wanted to do geophysics. I was really fascinated by the environment and how the world works. So I decided to read geophysics at the University of Edinburgh. And then after that, I went to NASA Goddard Space Flight Centre for an internship. And then I went back to university, went to the University of Oxford and did some climate change research. But while I was there, I got offered an editorial internship at New Scientist magazine. And I thought, wow, I really actually prefer media. I love this side of things. And New Scientist, I was translating a lot of scientific articles into something that's a bit more readable for people who've got an interest in science, but maybe not in that field. So that's where sort of that's where I first really started being able to translate something complicated into something a little bit more simple. And I ended up working at New Scientist for 4 years until one of my colleagues actually saw an advert in the job section for the magazine where the Met Office was looking for a new broadcast meteorologist to join the BBC weather team. And you didn't have to be a meteorologist and you didn't have to be a presenter. So you did have to have a science background, but it wasn't too specific. So I was like, and it was a bit of a jokey suggestion, but I thought, why not? And I applied and it turned into a new career. So I'm very glad that my friend Ben suggested that. Now, the first interview I ever went to at the BBC was actually on camera, and I was given 2 weather charts and told to make up a forecast. And it wasn't so much to see whether or not I knew what I was talking about at that point, but it was to see whether or not I could just keep going and communicate some information. Thankfully, I don't think that footage still exists, but I must have said something right because I got the job. And initially, I spent a long time at the Met Office College and also in some RAF bases, getting my aviation forecaster qualifications, learning how to present properly for the BBC at the same time. And then I passed my advanced forecaster exams. And that meant revising all that calculus and thermodynamics that I hadn't done for quite a while since university. And then after that, working my way up through various TV and radio channels. And over the years, I've moved from the BBC to ITV, changed channels a few times, been nominated for a Trick Award, and I've become a Fellow of the Royal Meteorological Society. So a bit of a flashback there. That's when I was first at the BBC. There's some familiar faces there from the past. I think that might have been about 2007, 2008. So I just wanted to sort of summarize the main strengths I think you need if you're interested in weather presenting. You do need a strong science background. Not everyone has one, but it really helps. It helps you to understand what the model's doing so that you can explain the shortcomings of the forecast or what might or might not happen and why. So it's good to have maths or physics, ideally to university level, but even to A level is also good. You need good communication skills. You need to be able to write the forecast. You need to be able to speak it, and you need to know your audience and what they want to hear. For some people, it's just hot, cold, wet, dry. And do I need my umbrella? Is it going to be windy? It's also good to know that you're flexible because there's a lot of unsociable hours when it comes to doing weather. People want to know it first thing in the morning, which means you have to be up and ready even earlier than that. So 3 o'clock in the morning alarm calls are not out of the question. And that is tough. Shift work is tough in the body, but I also feel lucky to have seen so many beautiful sunrises. You get to go to the shops when nobody else is around. So it does have its benefits. And usually if you do shift work, you get paid a bit more, which is very useful information. If you want to be on TV, a really top tip is to know your stuff. The best presenters you see on television are passionate about what they're talking about. They're not just reading a script that somebody else wrote for them. They know what they're talking about and they want to tell you about it. So if you know something and you're passionate about it, that will come across. You've got to be yourself, but a little bit more, because TV almost flattens everything down. So if you think, oh my God, I sound ridiculous, I'm really over the top, it actually comes across okay. So you've got to be a little bit confident, a little bit more than you'd expect to be if you're going to do some presenting. These days with social media, I try not to do too much online because there are an awful lot of people out there I don't want to listen to. Don't feed them, don't listen to the trolls. You have to develop quite a thick skin to deal with what viewers might say to you and also what management might say to you. It can be a bit of a tough industry, the TV industry. And always have a plan B. I think that's why I have so many jobs at the moment. I have different ideas of what I might want to do, and it's good to always have another string to your bow. But if you love weather and you're passionate about communicating it to others, then weather presenting or broadcast meteorology is pretty much a dream job.